Good morning, Read 180 students. Today is Monday, November 23rd, and today we're going to be working on Workshop 4, Lesson 16. In the first slide here, you will see what you're going to need for today. You'll need your iPad, your pencil, your binder so you can do your bell work, and your real book. At some point, though, if you're waiting for us to start, you please check your student view for missing assignments. Anything that has been submitted in Schoology has been updated in student view, so you can see. And if you did not submit your assignments, you're going to see missing or a 0. Remember, it's going to remain a 0 until you turn it in, but don't let it go too far, because anything past 2 weeks will no longer be accepted. All right, so you'll see today, again, your daily check-in. Now, just a reminder, that is not the only way I take attendance. You must be attending Zoom in order to be counted present for the day. Our first Zoom starts with our normal time. So by 8:25, 8:30, you should be checked into the waiting room for Zoom. If you do not do that and you have not contacted the office that you are absent because you're sick or out of town, it will be marked as an absence for the day. All right, so the agenda, again, your daily check-in, your bell work, you're going to be doing week 9, day 1. And like I said, we're going to be working on lesson 16, pages 218 to 219. Also, the second part of the period, you'll be working on your software for 20 minutes. And remember, we only have 3 days this week, so I will be looking for a total of 60 minutes. If you have not been keeping up on software, there's really no way you can go back and make up that time. You need to keep up each week in order to get the points. And you'll notice in your student view, each week you're going to get up to 25 points, and that's really going to hurt your grade if you never do your software. And then the independent reading is 20 minutes, and I will gauge your participation using your reading log that you submit at the end of the week. All right, so just a couple reminders. Again, Zoom days are Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. However, there's no school Thursday and Friday. And then the learning target for today is to figure out the key idea of a text and cite text details as evidence. All right, so if you want to go ahead and turn to page 218 and 219, we will get started. Now, you'll notice on this slide, I have shown the different texts that we have used or have gone over in Workshop 4. You'll see we've done a memoir with behind the scenes, a timeline on tracking an assassin, and a narrative nonfiction, Chasing Lincoln's Killer. And so our goal for today is that we're going to use information from these 3 texts and then adding what we're reading today in order to discuss people's feelings towards President Lincoln. And if you notice in the bottom corner, today we will be reading an informational text. It's called A Nation Mourns. We will get a glimpse of the reactions of a grieving nation as Lincoln's casket travels from Washington, D.C. to his final resting place in Springfield, Illinois. All right, before we do that, we'll go through our 2 academic vocabulary words. Now remember, you can always pause this recording as you read through. I'm just going to keep moving, though, for the sake of the recording time. Our first word is declare, and to declare means to state how you feel in a public and confident way. And so I might say, it's exciting when a student declares that he or she has finished a book and is ready to take either an AR test or a reading counts test. Now at the bottom, you'll notice I have a couple of pictures, and that's going to maybe help you with your example. You're going to answer this question. What information have you heard your teacher declare recently? I heard my teacher declare that what? And so if you're kind of stuck here, it might just be like a thumbs up, like the class is doing a great job with their reading. It might be great idea. I declared that to a student. That was a great idea, a great suggestion that you had. Sometimes I've also had to declare if the group is too loud, and I might have to tell the group or the students to be quiet. or they need to quiet down and pay attention. Our next word is principle. Now, principle is a belief about what is right or wrong that influences actions or behaviors. Now, this is not the same as like the principal, Mr. Wayne or Mr. Green. You'll notice the last three letters of the word principle in this case is about a belief. The principal, like Mr. Wayne or Mr. Green, would be the spelling P-A-L. So not to get those confused. Now you'll notice that one of the things that you're going to respond to is what is one principle that is important to you. I tried to put a couple of pictures on this slide. One principle that is important to me is free speech because, and then I will explain why. Or one principle that is important to me is respect, or showing everybody respect. And then you're going to go ahead and explain why you chose that or why you believe that. All right, now we are going to read an excerpt. Remember, an excerpt is just part from a story or a book. And it's an excerpt from author Jeffrey C. Ward's book, The Civil War. In A Nation Mourns, we will read how Americans paid their final respects to President Lincoln. Okay. Now remember, President Lincoln has been assassinated, and most of the nation is in a period of deep mourning. All right. Now, when we talk about in this excerpt where they talk about for people to pay their final respects, to pay final respects means that when someone dies, people who care about that person want to pay their final respects or show that they respected that person and are remembering good things about him or her. So as we read through this, you're going to be keeping in mind, you're going to answer the question, how did Americans pay their final respects to President Lincoln? And you're going to come up with two ways. But as we're reading, I want you to also think, why would most Americans want to pay respects to President Lincoln? Why is that important? Why would the respects or showing their commitment, why is that important? All right, so before we read on, or before we answer any of these more questions, we're going to read the text together. And again, as I read aloud, I want you to follow along and then be prepared to find two ways that Americans paid their final respects to Lincoln. All right, so page 218 and 219. A Nation Mourns by Jeffrey C. Ward. In this excerpt from The Civil War, author Jeffrey C. Ward describes the path of the funeral train and how people across the United States paid their final respects to their fallen president. Abraham Lincoln died at 7:22 a.m. The telegraph carried the news across the country in minutes. No president had ever before been murdered. People were to remember for the rest of their lives where they were and what they felt and what the weather was like when they heard it. Gideon Welles walked the wet streets of Washington. On the avenue in front of the White House were several hundred African American people, mostly women and children, weeping and wailing their loss. This crowd did not diminish through the whole of that cold, wet day. Lincoln's casket lay in state, first in the East Room of the White House, then in the rotunda of the Capitol. He was to be buried in Springfield, his adopted home. Top of page 219. The funeral train took 14 days and traveled 1,662 miles through the soft spring landscape, retracing the route Lincoln had taken to Washington 5 years earlier. In Philadelphia, Lincoln's coffin lay in Independence Hall, where he had declared he would rather be assassinated than surrender the principles embodied in the Declaration of Independence. The double line of mourners stretched 3 miles. In Manhattan, scalpers sold choice window positions along the route for $4 and up. The procession lasted 4 hours. Blacks had been barred, which means they were not allowed, and they'd been barred from the New York ceremonies, but a last-minute change of heart by the mayor permitted them to take part, provided they march at the rear. At Cleveland, no public building was thought big enough to hold the expected crowds, and an outdoor pavilion was set up through which 10,000 mourners passed every hour, all day, despite a driving rain. There was a run on black drapery material in the city, and many households had dyed their own. The rain caused scores of draped buildings to run with black. It finally ended in Springfield on May 4th. Among the thousands of people who shuffled past his bier, which is a stand on which the coffin is placed, were many people who had known him in the old days, farmers from New Salem, law clients and rival attorneys, neighbors who had nodded to him each morning on his way to work. General Joseph Hooker, in charge of the final leg of the long journey, led the slow march through a gentle rain in Oak Ridge Cemetery. All right, so if you notice on this next page, when you do the read critically, you were to underline details in paragraph 3 that describe people's reactions. If you cannot find those, I do have a picture, and go ahead and do that in your own real book, please. All right, so when we read critically, you're going to have to turn back to pages 206 and 207 to identify the details about what Keckley observed about the reactions of people in Washington, D.C. Once you've refreshed your memory on those 2 pages, you're going to answer this next question. Based on these details and Elizabeth Keckley's description of mourners in behind the scenes, how did people in Washington, D.C. feel about Lincoln? And then the last thing you're going to do is you're going to complete the react and write. Now, in order to do this, you're going to have to return to page 196, Chasing Lincoln's Killer, to identify those reactions to Lincoln's assassination. Then you will compare and contrast those reactions with the reactions from A Nation Mourns. And you'll notice the question is, how are people's reactions to Lincoln's assassination in this text similar to reactions in Chasing Lincoln's Killer? And then the second part, you must do both. How are they different? Now again, remember, when you're reading critically, that it sometimes involves combining the information from several texts on the same topic in order to write or speak knowledgeably about a subject or a topic. And again, it brings in those different perspectives and deepens your understanding. Now this you're going to be working on your own at this point. Remember to take a picture, make sure that all of the questions are answered thoroughly and completely. Do not just put a few words and expect to get full points on that. And again, you need to come up with two things in the key idea, a complete sentence for reading critically, and then a comparing and contrasting 2 parts on the react and write. Now, here's your reminder for your tasks for today. Daily check-in, your bell work, lesson 16, 20 minutes of software, and reading for 20 minutes. And again, you can pause this recording and you can go back as you need to re-listen to the story or to reread it on your own if that helps you answer the questions. All right, just a reminder, please be submitting all of your assignments to the correct folders in Schoology. That is where I go to correct. If you email it to me, you'll be asked to resubmit. Just a reminder. And again, you need to be getting that late work done. We're going to be approaching midterm here, so you don't want to have a lot of that out. All right, I'm going to let you go for now. You have a great day. See you tomorrow.